All right. And we are here. And we are on episode number 45, Biz.
Wow.
45. So, I'm Patrick Joanne.
And I'm Biz LeGens.
And on the show today, we've got the one, the only Mr. Scott Fitzgerald, filmmaker, radio personality, where I kind of initially met you, I think. Or was it? I mean, it might have been through film, actually, that maybe we met. And now Vox Rocks recording and production studio owner, CEO, master classman.
Head cheese.
So thanks for coming on the show, man.
My pleasure. Thanks for having. I'm glad we can finally do this. It's been a while trying to wrangle this together, but it's my pleasure.
Yeah, we've been trying to get this going, like schedule wise. I know you've been busy because you got your new film that's coming out, and you've got your business that's going, and we'll talk about all those things in just a second after we get through our the way that we kind of make our pocket change here. So
Drink of the week.
Yeah, as per normal, we talk about whatever drinks we're drinking. So what do you got, Scott, there?
So I have this. I think it's called Paromi bourbon vanilla tea.
Huh.
It's
Is it like bourbon fermented vanilla. Is that the deal?
I don't know.
It just sounds.
Is it a powder in that container?
We blend. It's little bags of tea.
Oh, okay.
There's little things. You throw them in there.
Uh-huh.
We blend bourbon vanilla beans from Madagascar with our full-bodied Assam black tea and a delicate note of caramel to bring out the brew's intensely smooth, decadent side, which it is very good. It's not something that I drink all the time, just on special occasions, and I figured right now was the perfect time to bust out with the Paromi.
That's excellent. Nice. Yeah, you'll have to send me a link to that, or just the spelling of it, just so I have it too. I can post that
Sure.
link. Biz, what do you got going on?
I decided to go with a little blend of Dr. Pepper and cream soda this week.
Always so fancy, Biz. Biz either has like Monster Energy drinks or Red Bull or Dr. Pepper or just a cup of like Dunkin' Donuts. We are running a show here, Biz.
I have the best blend of unique drinks. You say that I have all of these things, but like, how many times have I bought drinks that aren't even in the English language?
That is true. No, sometimes you do come across with some. So what was it? It's Dr. Pepper vanilla, you said?
No, Dr. Pepper and cream soda. Get it right, Patrick. Vanilla is already one of the 23 flavors of Dr. Pepper.
Do you know?
I just got like an insulin rush from thinking about drinking that.
Do you know what flavor Dr. Pepper is supposed to be? Do you know what flavor?
It's multiple, but it's supposed to be a like vanilla blend of multiple flavors, but cinnamon, vanilla.
Really?
There's 23 flavors. Yeah, that there are.
Oh shit! I thought it was like black cherry for some reason,
or ginger beer variety.
It has those vibes, but honestly, it strikes. It strikes something that all the other ones kind of don't. It has kind of like a spice to it without being spicy. Like ginger beer and birch beer have that like that taste.
The painful,
yeah.
Taste.
That's the perfect way to explain it. Biz.
Cream soda is just straight malt, so it's like if you put Dr. Pepper with malt, it just makes it a slight like sweeter sort of taste. It's kind of good.
Out of any of the drinks, like the sodas, because I'm not a big soda drinker. Like sometimes I'll do like a real ginger ale, like something that's got actual ginger in it or whatever.
Right.
I just don't like soda for whatever reason. But Dr. Pepper I've always liked. I don't know why. Out of all the sodas, that's probably the worst. Full of chemicals thing.
It's funny, my throat's a little sore, and for some reason I have this like mindset that like of all the sodas, like Dr. Pepper and ginger ale for some reason like help soothe your throat. Like,
is it because there's doctor in the name, Biz?
I don't think so. I think it's because of the flavors of it. It's one of those like, it doesn't really taste like a soda to me. Like nothing tastes like soda that's not Coke, really. So like,
but yeah, out of all the sodas, that's the one that I would actually navigate to if it wasn't like a real, like I like the what do you call it, craft sodas sometimes too, but
Yeah,
even those are too much for me. And I went with tea too. I'm still on my no alcohol kick, which does that tea doesn't actually have bourbon in it. You read the ingredients.
No.
All right.
Well, I hope not, because I don't drink.
Otherwise, you'd be tanked by now.
Oh, I was wondering why I like it so much.
Yeah. You're slurring your words there a bit.
Just a little bit.
But this one's great.
No.
And I've actually drank it on the show a long time, like maybe one of the, like when we were in the teens with episodes, Harney and Sons. I think it was a different one though. And this is Paris. I think I've mixed it with booze before too. I've added like rum or vodka or something to it. But this Paris is unbelievable. It's got what the heck does it have in it? Black teas, natural vanilla. So we're all on this like vanilla kick, I guess, today. Fruit and citrus flavors. But if you get the opportunity, try this stuff.
You made a reference to something that only you would get. I wasn't even the host in the teens, man. Come on.
That's true. Yeah, I think that might have. Were you
episode 19 was my episode that you featured me on, and then I think you had maybe one episode after that, and then you took your hiatus, and then I came in as co-host after.
That's right. Yeah, I was in the middle of like a giant move and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you get the opportunity to Paris, and I'll post all the links obviously to all this stuff. And enough about drinks. Scott, thanks for coming on. We've got, if you're watching the video, your logo there in the back for your recording studio. Mostly podcast oriented, would you say? And I like the picture of the microphones that you got in the back.
Yeah, this from Analog Prints. Nice folks over there. There's another one on the other side you can't see. Also microphone. Oh no, that one's the altar of. It's the altar of audio editing, and it's this big, like Masonic looking altar with the old tape machine and the razor blade. Anyway, yeah, so the main thing that I started doing was voiceovers for e-learning, which I took over from another guy who was doing it, and he was closing up shop, and I took over his clients, and then I said I want to add another revenue stream, and felt like podcasting was the right way to go, and that was three years ago, so looked like It was a good choice.
3 years
For sure.
Holy mackerel. Yeah, so let's kind of I always forget to kind of pimp out the websites and how people can reach out to you. So let's do that up front, and then we'll do it on the back end too, and maybe once during the show, just so people know if they want to come to you, record a podcast, or they want to find any of your your work with regards to your films. Where would they go to see all that stuff?
rockvox.com. Right. And actually my film work is I've gone through a lot of changes over the years doing with the film stuff. So Loose Screw Productions is the film side of things.
Okay.
But I don't know if that website is really, it might go right to the Facebook page at this point. We're terrible.
I mean, if people Google your name or any of the names of the films that we mentioned during the show, obviously, and I can post links to it in the
Rockvox comes up at like number one if you're looking for a podcast studio in Rochester.
Okay, excellent. So let's start at the beginning, I guess, of all this stuff, which normally we do. So what got you into, obviously you were a radio guy for a long time and sort of still are, right? Outside of the podcast thing, like what ended up getting you into the filmmaking, the podcasting, the radio stuff? I mean, were you doing that as a kid? Were you always into like...
Yeah, I was doing when I was a kid, and I can't tell you how many people I've heard say that they did this too when they work in this field. But, sitting there with my dual tape deck, doing WFTZ Fitz Radio as like a 10-year-old, going from one song to the next, or making, when we first got the video camera, it wasn't even a camcorder. It was the kind you had to hook up to the VCR and strap it around and walk around with you.
I remember those. Biz probably doesn't remember
myself.
Yeah, that predates my not only filmmaking existence, but even my knowledge of how
your entire
how
existence.
video was captured.
I borrowed my uncle's video camera when I was like 12 years old. He let me use it, and I just sat there making all these silly little things, and so for the longest time I was like, I want to be a cameraman. I didn't know what any of that was. I want to be a cameraman and I want to be on radio. And it's just kind of weird that how over the years it sort of all kind of came together that way. But I didn't work until radio until I got to Rochester.
Do you think it see, I feel like a lot of people say that too, like somehow I just ended up here, but I don't think so. I think you were slowly kind of putting the pieces together over time, even though I may not know the backstory, just because I've heard it so many times too, that's how kind of people end up where they are at a given time. It's like, everything you were doing was kind of like moving you towards this this place that you're in, these little steps. And what interests me about that in particular is that if you know ahead of time like what direction you're heading in, you can make those small steps intentionally instead of subconsciously or accidentally, and maybe...
I stumbled my way to where I am right now. Totally. I tripped down a couple of flights of stairs to get here, or tripped up. I don't know how you trip upstairs, but I think I might have did that too.
So you started just recording what on video? Like what were you making? Like short films or something?
Like stupid stuff. Like a lot of it was stop motion, which is not anything that I do now and I would never do anymore because I just don't have the patience for it. But that was all. It was just me with the video camera. It's not like I had other siblings. I do have siblings, but my brothers are 10 and 11 years older than me, so they were out of the house when I was 12 years old. They were in their 20s, so I was by myself. I had Star Wars figures or GI Joe guys, and I'd be like doing stuff. Most of it was stop motion, which I wish I had because it would be funny to watch that. Right. I actually just found a videotape of me. And if you think about this, you know how you can go on YouTube watch people playing video games. I have a videotape of me playing Dr. J 1-on-1 on my Apple. Huh. It was like 3 hours of me playing that little basketball game.
Just like filming the screen?
Just filming the screen and me playing the game and like doing voices. Huh. I was like, oh my God. And I found the tape. I was like,
it's
oh my God.
Twitch. Yes. Like the beginnings of Twitch back in the day.
Twitch 1985 version.
Huh. Oh, that's crazy. So I kind of remember doing stuff like that too. I remember when I was coming into my teens at like 13 years old, it's like 1993. Video cameras were sort of available, but not, they were too expensive still from me as a kid to have it. Like nowadays, like kids having phones. My daughter.
Here's your video camera.
Yeah, she's 10 and she's doing stop motion stuff with like apps that have the ability to move little, already animated characters, and she can move them, put them to music, and do all this sort of stuff. Back in the day, I remember just filming stuff. I had gotten some Super 8 camera from what are those? Not a consignment store, but like a
Goodwill store or something like that,
like
or a thrift store.
Yeah, thrift store. There you go. I was at a loss for the word of it. And doing silly stuff like that too, just filming each other, doing little skits and things of that nature. Did you make any like I guess not full length movies because those are a little tougher to do, but like what was your longest piece that you made with that?
It wasn't until college when I was in, I was going to school for broadcasting to be in radio, and part of the course load was to take a videography 101 class. So I took a videography class, and you had to do like a little short. And in the short, you had to have, an over the shoulder shot. You had to have a 2-shot. You had to have all those kind of things. So I wrote it was like a 3 or 4 minute thing. It was a dialogue between two of my friends, and it took place in like 12 different locations. Which now if you write that and you say, look at how many locations, they're like, what are you, crazy? But it was like 3 or 4 minutes long. But that was college. When I was younger, I never really did any, because I didn't have a camcorder, so I couldn't like go any further than 6 feet away from the TV. So I didn't have a whole lot of choice there.
It's funny too, like how much chances and how non-conservative, I guess you can say, you get with your shots and your film stuff when you're a young filmmaker and you have no experience to know like this is going to be a giant pain in the ass. Right. To do this. You're like, all right, we're going to be on top of a mountain.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll bring a car full of lights and cameras and all this stuff and actors and we're going to cover everyone in fake blood and all that that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
in the desert.
I've seen those behind the scenes interviews of filmmakers when they talk about, oh, I was 12 years old and I made a 40-minute film and we had explosions and we had this. That was not me. That was not me at all.
So what made you make the move? Obviously, you had a video camera, and you were you doing almost like voiceover? Was that kind of more what you were doing with the video camera than filming like stories, let's say?
So when I was going to college, I got myself into quite a bit of debt. I was a musician at the time. My buddy and I decided we were going to start a recording studio. So we bought a whole bunch of mics and we bought like a reel-to-reel 8-track recorder. And I was in a lot of debt and I was in school for radio, and I took an internship at Carnival Cruise Lines in the video department. And that is how I got on the visuals track as a career, because I was going into radio at that point, but they offered me a job and I couldn't turn it down because it was $20,000 a year. Right. And I was like, holy crap, this is a big time.
Right. And people, it's funny too, because when you see, people think like, oh, you're on the radio. And I think the fame, like, makes people think, or the recognition from being in like the entertainment industry, right, being on the radio or TV makes people think you're making so much money. Like the small time radio guys
in Rochester.
Yeah.
There's two guys in Rochester that are making good money in radio.
Right. But you went from video to like, what made you pick, instead of video as your main thing, what made you pick broadcasting, like radio, as your thing, as opposed to the...
So I worked for 10 or so years in video production. I moved up here. My wife is from Webster, so we eventually moved up here, and that's a whole different story of how many times. So it
was video production.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I was working at Carnival Cruise Lines. I was working in the corporate video department, and it was actually a really cool gig for when you're in your early 20s, because I was traveling around to the Med, to the Caribbean, just shooting video, going on cruise ships for a couple of weeks. It was pretty wild. It wasn't until I got married and had kids that it was like, all right, that's done. I'm done with that. But right. I didn't really get into my first professional radio job wasn't until 2011 here in Rochester. I never worked in radio when I was going to school. I ended up taking a job in video production, and I eventually went back and finished my last 5 classes to get my coveted Associate of Science degree. Right. So I was working stiff and, learning the trade and stuff. And, the rest of it is
so what when
chance.
You say the video production and the corporate for Carnival, like what were you doing? Was it like commercials, like basically advertisement video, or was it? It
was all in-house work. So we started off doing the weddings on the ships. So we would have these guys that could barely speak English. They were photographers that we just gave them video cameras and said, here, you could do it, which was a mistake because they couldn't. They had no idea what white balance was. And we would get these pictures, these videos back of people that were blue. It was just crazy. But that's what we were doing. We were editing the videos, the wedding videos from the guys that shot it on board. They'd send it back in the what's called the bullet, which is like the inter-office mail that comes off the ship. We'd edit it and then we'd send it out to the guest. And then we started doing promotion stuff, and we started doing more, in the big production shows that they have on the ships. They started incorporating video, and we got to get into that. By the time we were done, after I was there for 10 years, we ended up running all of the broadcast on 22 different ships. And training all of these guys. It was a huge department, but it started off with 2 of us.
What was being broadcast? Like I've actually never been on a cruise before, so
on the ship there's it's like they have satellites, so they have 25 stations, or probably more by now. I mean, geez, but they had their own onboard television. And you You could go and flip and be like, oh, there's a little information video about the engine room, and there's a little video about the bridge, and here's a tour through the galley. And so that's all the stuff that we got to do, which was a lot of fun at the time.
So you got to film like the engine room and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I had to write, shoot, edit, voice, the whole thing. And I did like hundreds of those from start. It was a great learning experience. But
yeah, do you see how that comes full circle to now, where every film that's made, there's like 3 people and then 100 others that you get, randomly to help out that hardly get paid. But so that's interesting. So that was kind of your start. Did you love doing it at that time, or was it like, this is a job?
I would have loved it more if I don't know if you've ever worked with a real difficult boss, but the guy who was running our department was very ambitious, and did not think that we needed to have lives. So he would be like, and he was an English guy too. So I actually found out quite recently, about 3 years ago, I went to get some therapy, because my life was pretty much spiraling out of control. I went to get some therapy. And after about 4 or 5 sessions, my therapist said, Scott, you have post-traumatic stress disorder. I'm like, what do I have PTSD from? I wasn't in a war. And she's like, no, it's from your job, from when you worked at Carnival. And that's how, like, my boss was so demanding, and so he wanted everything now, wanted everything, it was just, for a guy in his early 20s, it was a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
Do you think that in some way, so we've talked about that when we had Jonathan showed us about growing up in New York City, like how certain neighborhoods, especially the neighborhood that my former guest there and my friend John grew up in, Ravenswood Projects. I mean, it was constantly, your head had to be on a swivel all the time. Like, you had to be constantly watching everything around you. And similarly, he said he thinks he has, a level of PTSD. And I think kind of the same way, from I've never been diagnosed with it or anything like that, but I'm constantly like on guard in that sense. Do you think that in a way actually helped to form your future, like, work ethic, even though it was it's not necessarily a good thing that you have the anxiety around what that causes? So you said yes, right? Did lend you something.
The funny thing is now I work best when I have a ridiculous deadline, because that's what that was always what was in front of me. It would be like, right, we need to do this project and we got to get it done by tomorrow. And it was like, it was a terrible accent, by the way.
So that sounds a little more Australian than English.
Whatever. It wasn't anything, and let's just forget. You could just edit that out if you want. But he, and it was just ridiculous deadlines. And now I'm finding that in some way I'm starting, like, I will procrastinate on something because I know that if I wait till the last minute, I'm going to crush it, which is a terrible way to work. Yeah. I'm trying to break myself of that habit and trying to, like, give myself fake deadlines and say, all right, well, I have to have it done by tomorrow, and see if that works. But deep down, it's not done for, due for another 2 weeks. So you're just kind of lying to yourself. But it's a terrible way to work. But that job got me into that way of being able to work under pressure and to troubleshoot. We were a video production department inside a cruise line. So our budget was a part of the photo department. So we didn't get, it wasn't like, here's the video department, what do you need? It was like, here's what you can have, make the best of it. So we had to work with just crap half the time. And so learning to troubleshoot why things weren't working has become what I do every day. Yeah. That's the best training that I got there.
Yeah. And I think that's, sometimes we look back to at jobs we hated or things that I guess weren't fun. And I've talked about like my fast food experience, even opening up a bar restaurant, like how valuable that was when I owned my own place, not realizing, you know, maybe like a few months into it, like, oh, all that stuff that I learned back in the day from the fast food places I worked at, just, you know, flipping burgers or making tacos, you know, was or making coffee at Starbucks too, because I worked at Starbucks. But like all that stuff was actually a useful thing. And even some of the corporate, you know, I call it bullshit that is somewhat necessary, like building a culture in a company.
Yeah.
Sort of like leadership things that you take from like a Starbucks, that once it's that big, it turns into this weird cliche. Like you know, Verizon stuff too is kind of like that. It turns into this cliched version of a culture. But
Oh yeah.
so, but now you're working on not Carnival Cruise videos. I mean, you've done a number of short films and then a few features now, right?
We've only done one feature.
One feature.
Yeah, I've worked on other features, but not. This is the first one that we've done ourselves.
Is it so? This is the first time you're actually producing and directing.
Yeah, I mean, to this scale, it was one hell of a learning experience to have to produce this film, and Biz can speak to this. You know, we really spread our nickels to, you know, we got that really far. And, you know, one of the things that we wanted to do was make sure that everybody got paid, and tried not to ask too many people to work for free. I mean, we did do like, hey, can I pay you in 6 months, or,
Right.
you know, over the course of 6 months or something. But we wanted to make sure that they got money, that it was as professional of a film as it could be, because so many people in this town especially have been burned by people who are like, yeah, we're doing this great thing. We want you to be a part of it. You're going to be so lucky to be a part of it. And like, right, you know, you die from exposure. You can't make money from exposure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that part of what you're doing too is something that I kind of like to do with my my music stuff too. If I have studio musicians, I like to pay them. I like to have contracts, and even if it's small budget, you know, a professional atmosphere I think lends to more professional performances, and the overall product ends up being better because everyone's on the same page and everything's up front. You have actually in this movie, so I know Biz has worked on it, and I don't know if I should say that. I guess something of piece of work of mine is in
absolutely
a piece of music. I have yet to see any of. I think I've seen like the trailer. I think
and that was the original teaser that we did before we shot the movie. We shot a proof of concept teaser in 2017. So I've been actually having trouble cutting together a trailer for this, to be honest with you. It hasn't been coming together easily, but yes, your song is in there. Is I want to say it's Shadow.
Yeah, I See Your Shadow.
I See Your Shadow. It's a great song, and it fits perfectly right where we have it.
What's the name of the movie again? Just for the
Bottom Feeders.
Bottom Feeders, and that I know there's a Facebook page, right? So is it The Bottom Feeders or just Bottom Feeders?
It's just Bottom Feeders. The website is actually The Bottom Feeders Movie, because we couldn't get Bottom Feeders. TheBottomFeedersMovie.com, and I think that goes to the Facebook page. Doesn't matter. But yeah, we're on Facebook.
And who's can you give us like a synopsis, I guess, of it, and who's in it? I know you got a few people in there locally here from Rochester, New York, that are acting in it, I think, right?
Yeah. Bottom Feeders is about two college guys who are desperately trying to hang on to their college careers, I guess. They're classic underachievers. They don't really strive for much. And there's two females who think they can change them. And you kind of have to, you know, go for the ride to see what happens. But it's Paolo Marinaccio, who's from Buffalo, and Nicole Palermo. She's from Rochester, but she lives in New York City now. And then Alex Packard and Melody Rohrig. We got so lucky with the cast. Such a great cast. Plus comedian Sky Sands, and also Jeremy London came in. We flew him in for a day to do a couple of scenes that are actually some of my favorite scenes of the whole movie.
Oh, so that's awesome. So yeah, I can't wait to actually see it. Do you have yet a release date for it? I know that COVID probably put some stuff, some roadblocks in the way of it coming out. But
well, it's funny because we wrapped on Friday,
The
March
13th.
13th. Right? Remember, Biz? Like the world was crashing down around us, and we're like, "Oh my God, what's going on?"
Bottom Feeders was my last job for I want to say like 3.5 months, and then I got picked up for a feature film. Actually, I was one of the supporting actors for it. It was my next paid job after Bottom Feeders, and that was in July.
Wow,
that's pretty crazy. That
Yeah.
like right at that. But I mean, it's a good thing too that you caught it. You finished. Filming part, because most of the editing and stuff can be kind of done.
And we wouldn't have been able to finish it because we shot 6 months apart. We shot in exteriors in September, and we shot interiors in February, March.
Does the movie actually span that time frame? Like,
no, the movie spans like 2 months.
Oh, does it?
Yeah, I was gonna say it's a short time frame for sure.
And it's a comedy, right? Is it a comedy?
Yeah, it's a comedy.
So, a comedy, and so the bottomfeedersmovie.com. I'll say it again. I just need to make sure I'm actually plugging stuff when people say see where they're from too. So that's awesome. How is it coming out? Are you still in the editing phase now, or what's
just?
We're actually
just at we're just at Magic Spell Studios today over at RIT doing the sort of final pass on the audio mix. It's all edited, it's all ready. The only thing we're waiting on is the opening credit sequence, which is an animation, and the final credit roll. Otherwise, it's done. Color correction, everything is done.
Oh, fantastic.
Nice. What are you planning on like releasing it on? Like, is it going to be streaming? Is it going to be? Are you doing?
So we submitted to South by Southwest. We submitted a work in progress cut. Basically, the whole thing was done. We had a rough mix. We just, again, didn't have the credit sequences, but the whole film was colored and edited. So we submitted that to South by Southwest, and that prohibited us from having any kind of a public showing, because it's supposed to premiere. If they accept it, it's supposed to premiere at South by Southwest. So that and COVID has caused some issues, but thinking that just after the first of the year, we're going to,
Can I ask a question? When
Sure.
you say that it was submitted for South by Southwest, are you talking about the premiere that would have happened like in 2020 or in the 2021 South by Southwest rotation?
The 2021.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because the deadline was end of October.
You scared me for a second there, because I have a film. I mean, I didn't make it or anything, but I acted in a film that's supposed to be at the South by Southwest for 2020, and it got pulled because of COVID. So I was going to say there were supposed to be 2 films that I worked on there at the same time. I was a little shocked.
What did they do with that? Did they bump everything from 2020 to 21?
Well, I guess that they allowed there was like, I guess, kind of like a raffle or a lottery for all the films that were part of the 2020 sequence, got a chance to air for, I think, a week or 4 days on Amazon Prime, and 10 films got selected to air through there. And my understanding is the one that I was in, they kind of opted to not really be in the raffle because they still wanted to do a full-blown release in a normal way, if that's still going to be something. But they were like, maybe if 2021 looks like 2020 did, maybe we'll consider it. But until then, we still would like to do all of our actors and all of our hard work justice and have a full-blown release like we plan to. I mean, the scenes that I've seen of the movie, I mean, I know that we hear this a lot when we're filmmakers, but like, it looks like a real movie. Like, it looks like a movie that would be a classic for years to come, the scenes that I've seen of it. And being that
again?
it's called Drunk Bus. It stars Charlie Tahan and Kara Hayward. And it's being that I've grown up in Rochester and been in Rochester for so long, seeing these Rochester places that are redone, like Worldwide News on St. Paul, they have it redone to say Worldwide Food, and it's a food store that like one of them like steals something from, or so, so just seeing this old rundown city that I live in be revitalized to be used as something new in a film is kind of like, it's inspiring to see specifically. So that's why I specifically want to see it, just because of the fact that they kind of came in, did their thing, and
Did they
and
release
it,
it, or you're saying they're waiting for something?
no, they're waiting for the release to do it. My understanding is that there hasn't been any sort of public release of it, and that the only clips that have been released have been very few and far between. So
Have you found, Scott, that like because I mean you've been at this now for 3 years, and the podcast thing, I mean obviously we're doing one, right? But there's probably a lot of people during COVID that were contemplating maybe doing a podcast or things like that. Have you seen like an uptick in people coming out to your studio to do it, or was it like it stopped?
No, you know, I was afraid that it would stop. So the first 2 years of business were the podcast part of it was very light, but the e-learning voiceover stuff, because I have like 30 plus people on my roster that do voiceovers here. So a client will ask, you know, oh, we want this person or we want that person. But after COVID, all of the e-learning went down and the podcasting shot up, which seems weird because you would think e-learning, you know, everything being virtual, but it's just the way it worked out. And a lot of people just decided that they wanted to do podcasts and decided that they, you know, didn't have the technical wherewithal to do it themselves. And
so explain a little bit too about what you got equipment wise there, because obviously you're on a nice microphone you got there. You've got your TV behind you. Me and Biz like to be in dungeons and basements and random weird places. Hence, that's
where we started.
Radio. It's our whole shtick.
Well, the room I'm in right now is our pod room. It's a double table here with 4 mics, these Rode Procasters. And I've got 4 Z-Cam E2C camera, 4K cameras. Nice. That are, and I've got a second studio next door that for people who want to do more of a like magazine style talk show thing with the nice chairs and it looks like a living room. We're actually doing a virtual Santa Claus in there now for the holidays, which worked out pretty well.
Oh, that's cool.
And then we have a voiceover booth there for the voiceovers and stuff. I think lucked out with this space.
Yeah. Where is your studio?
The space is gorgeous. Like 2 seconds from my house, man. It's so gorgeous. It's I love it there.
Every once in a while, I get a text from Biz. He's like, "I was just behind you on the road." That's in Bushnell's Basin.
Bushnell's Basin. All right. So where do you see like Roxvox going? Like, do you see it more as you think it's going to be primarily a podcast space going forward, or do you think that after all this clears up, you're going to see an uptick in the e-learning and other things? Because I think, I mean, obviously, even as a musician, right? I was talking today to my bass player and my piano player, and you know, I was part of the Recording Academy, and we fought to get this Save Our Stages act that just passed today, as of today, which we could do as part of our news, but I'll talk about it now. But just passed. But I was saying, you know, like, I'm glad that it passed because it's going to help some of these live music venues stay afloat, hopefully until we can get back to semi-normal. But I think the entertainment industry, the music business, even, I mean, radio has changed, where podcasting has come into like being able to be done in someone's, you know, bedroom, right? They can put on a radio show and produce it almost as good as something you'd hear on a commercial radio station. Same goes for film and music. I think that it was like the music industry, the live performances and the recording business in general needed a push over the edge to say you have to change or this is not going to last. And I'm seeing this shift of individuals who are adapting to what's going on, and seeing that it likely won't go back to what it was, the normal that it was before, in terms of an industry, because it wasn't working, you know, to begin with. Like you, and I don't know if you want to talk about this at all, but you made a jump from, you know, terrestrial radio which is actually we started this. I started this on terrestrial radio initially, and they really wanted music to be played. So I would have music for if you guys go back and listen to the archives and listen to the first few episodes. I don't know if I put music on the actual podcast, but you'll hear interruptions where I had to play music in between because the radio station wanted music on it. And I just found that it more interrupted the conversation and the quality of what I was putting out versus it being an addition to it. But they couldn't see past like, no, we need to have music as a terrestrial radio. That's the only thing people are going to listen to. And now you're seeing, I think, radio stations switch to almost 100% music. And I know I'm getting off course a little bit here with this, but the reason I bring it up because I see like talk shows even being taken off air, and them big ones like Rover's Morning Glory is a giant radio show in the United States, and they're being taken off radio stations even though they're number one in the ratings and being replaced with just music rotations from a computer. Maybe because it's cheap or whatever. But I made that same move. I said, I'm not going to, and I don't know if this was the reason behind what
I think that's a generational thing, by the way, that caused that to happen. I think millennials, they don't want to hear talking on their way to work. So it's shifted talk shows to go later into the day or to non-exist at all.
Well, the reason why Rover's Morning Glory went off the air is because the radio station company that owns that cluster is not making the right decisions.
I've never been a fan, but they've a lot of success. So I mean, you got to pay them the respect that I guess they deserve in that regard. But
I've always felt too like saying like with the band, I needed to make a shift. I started doing a lot more streaming things. I bought some equipment to be able to do live streaming from home shows, better audio quality, better video quality. I've got a 4K camera now that I can do some stuff with, and an 8-track audio interface and all that stuff, just to, because I know that's where it's moving. And with the podcast, same thing. I was like, I don't need to play music in here. I think the more the meat and potatoes of I think this is the second time in a show I've said meat and potatoes, but meat and potatoes of the show is the like conversations that we're having on it, and that's what I found people were really interested in. And so I said, well, if the terrestrial radio show is going to force me to put music beds in there, I think it's actually ruining the show versus making it better. So I just moved. I said I'm going to just do this whole thing as a podcast. Then I don't have to do necessarily music. If I want to have it on, I can do that. But I don't have to. So what made you make the jump from like terrestrial radio to like I'm going to do my own thing? And
COVID helped because they cut my hours down so much, and I was really at the point where I could have hung on to my radio job for chump change, even though I love doing morning radio, or I could take those 4 hours a day that I was putting into that job, which was really going nowhere, and put it into my own business and basically double down on myself and invest in myself. Because where was I going? I wasn't going anywhere there. I was going to be sitting there doing a music show, because everything is on demand, right? You go on Spotify, you can listen to whatever songs you want, whenever you want, in any order that you want for the most part. And radio, you gotta take what they give you, and you have to listen to the commercials too.
Right.
Nobody wants to do that.
And sometimes the radio personalities are not that flattering, or they're just especially a lot of I mean, forgive me, but I listen to a lot of pop music. Pretty much every pop channel has at least one person that is so idiotic, and I don't mean like some bubblegum popping teenager, like a man or a woman who's like an adult who's just saying things that you're like, are you being paid to be this stupid or what? Like there's a guy on like one of the local stations that on more than one occasion my wife and I have heard him talk about he has a fear of putting too much lotion on his hands and he won't be able to open the door. It's too slippery. Like, why have I heard that so much from this guy? Like, he should have been fired.
I think some individuals though are really I think they're they're good at talking and having conversations too. And then there are certain, I think, radio guys too that get into it that don't aren't that isn't necessarily their strong suit, right? They may
They're
have
just
a good
cringy,
voice,
man.
but
Yeah.
they're so maybe they have those those certain stories that they go back to when they're out of material or they're running out of it.
The crutches.
But I 100% agree with you, Scott, where now everything's on demand. And even if you want someone to serve up songs to you, there are playlists out there, like Apple Music has, its own thing where it'll just play random, music in a particular genre, or, just its own, I forget what it's called, Beats One or whatever they have now too, where there's actual DJs on there. I don't think there's commercials on it, because you're already paying for the service. Whether or not that's a good business, I mean, I guess for Apple, that makes sense. For Spotify, it makes sense. On the musician side, I find it that there needs to be some changes there, I think.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
With regards, because music is becoming very much commoditized in the age that everyone is able to make it, especially with the licensing for movies and stuff like that. You can have your own in a movie studio, you can have your own in-house guy that just sits on a computer and makes songs in 30 seconds that can fit into pieces of the movie. That'll work. That's just background stuff. And then occasionally you buy something. Whereas back in the day, I mean, they would generally buy and license music that was, put together by musicians. Not that the person sitting in-house in a studio isn't a musician, but
well, I will say that the bigger productions still, they still have a composer that composes this music, and they still have an orchestra play it. But you're right, it just the technology being so accessible and for the most part way cheaper than it ever used to be. More and more people can do this. They can have a podcast. They can, and I don't think that anybody can be a musician, but I think anybody could possibly put together a string of beats and samples that sound good. That to someone who's not very good at differentiating would be that's good enough. You know what I mean?
I was going to say something to that effect too, is that a lot of times you see like editors and cinematographers and composers go absolutely apeshit over something so small that the average person really doesn't even notice. And mostly anyone outside of their field doesn't notice, you know what I mean? But that's kind of what makes things great is, you know what I mean? Perfectionist perfecting, but
yep.
Well, what I kind
that.
of worry about though too is the commodization of it throughout all the entertainment industries and the arts. I find like so with pop music in particular. I mean, pop music has always been kind of bubblegum, kind of like a formula to make it happen.
For sure.
But like you haven't seen things like Cardi B's style of music, where it is like, if you've ever watched the movie, what is that, WALL-E? Where they go up into space and everyone's sitting, everyone's in the spaceship and everyone's sitting. Have you seen that, Scott? WALL-E?
I think my kids watch that. I don't think I'm familiar with. I know what you're talking about, but I don't think I've seen it.
They ruin the planet, and spoiler alert here, they ruin the planet. WALL-E's this little robot that's around, that was left there amongst other robots to clean up the planet, and then all of human population goes into space on this giant spaceship and will come back when Earth is finally cleaned up by these little robots. When they're in space, they all get fat, they sit in their chairs, they don't do anything other than like watch TV and sit in their chairs and eat, and they're all essentially, it's like, where potentially the humans can go. And then at the end of it, they end up coming back and rediscover, there's plants and we can be outside and all that sort of thing. But I worry that because it's accepted, like I think that people that are willing to make money off of things like music and film are not going to spend as much time making art as much as they will follow the formula more and more and more. And the stuff that is art will be so far on the fringes that it will be difficult for people to find that.
Yep.
It might even be difficult for people to accept. at a certain point too. It'll be too unique or too far from the
they won't
carbon copy.
they won't give it the time,
Right.
like sitting with a I don't know, a Pink Floyd album or a great piece of work. I mean, even now, right now it's singles, right? And now with TikTok, it's just the hook in the song. That's become like what people are listening to, and you see it, and it's slow and subtle over time that this is happening, but you're seeing musicians, and we talked about this, I think, on the last show, Biz, with Monica from the Recording Academy. We talked about, there are musicians that have no interest in writing anything beyond their one album, and they just remix and remix and remix that one song over and over and over again, and just have this hook, and that's how they make their money as musicians. And I think that worries me a little bit.
So somewhere along the lines of what you're saying right now is kind of what I've been, for lack of a better word, bitching about for the last few years, at least 5 years. So when you had the beginning of YouTube and online video, and more people with smartphones and little video cameras that are, going viral, all these things, right? So it's becoming part of your everyday. So people are watching these videos, and they're starting to get used to seeing crappy video, seeing terribly shot video.
There's just so much to consume. Yeah,
it becomes the norm. So then now you've got a guy who goes out and buys a $600 camera. He doesn't really know how to use it, but he thinks he does, or she. And we'll go out and do some not as terrible video, but if you're a professional, you look at it and you go, this is terrible. But because people have been so desensitized by what looks and sounds good, that now they've got this inferior piece of art or product, visual product, and they can pass it off. And people are like, yeah, that's fine. What's wrong with it? And we're like, what do you mean what's wrong with it? Look at the headroom. Look at the color saturation. Look at, the sync is off with the mouth.
Sorry.
Right. And I think that's that, and I don't want to come off as like, old guy that's, the music today is not what it was.
The damn kids today, get off my lawn.
What I kind of hope happens is what I saw for a long time, every 10 years kind of occurring, where this big shift in the style of music, or the style of film, and the style of television would happen. Like, for instance, when Nirvana came about, there was all that hair metal, pop metal stuff going on. Nirvana came about, and there's this giant shift to this like raw, kind of
angst,
grunge,
grunge style sound, and all the other arts kind of followed that too. There was like Mallrats and all those type of kind of underground
missed the 90s.
Filmmakers. Yeah, like the 90s were great. But
I am old.
But I think like every 10 years that happened. What I noticed though, and maybe I was just too old at the point to realize that it was happening, I feel like that didn't happen in the 2000s and didn't happen in the 2010s. It sort of I started to see in music, like the Americana movement, like this move back to like organic style music. And that's kind of gone away for the most part. I've seen recently. I'm wondering whether or not, and I'm hoping that eventually, because there's so much junk food, let's say art that's been coming out for the last 15 to 20 years, that we have this renaissance, especially after COVID. People have been in like dark places. I'm hoping that breeds this brilliant art. People have been sitting in their basements making this brilliant dark art, and they're going to come out of it and deliver this stuff.
Some of the best stuff that came out in the history of man has always been right after deep like stretches of repression.
Yeah, and
so you could be onto something there.
Yeah, I mean that's my hope. I'm not saying that will happen, but
yeah,
I am noticing a lot of musicians that are adapting, making stuff that's like, oh shit, that's pretty fucking good, and filmmakers.
Oh yeah,
and even just the writers and and things like that. So I think maybe the next thing we should get into, because this has been an interesting year, is there's something happening today or has already happened. So Biz, do you have the news, Biz's news corner?
Stop calling it that. Yeah, I've got your music that you've wanted.
You're the
me
one
to
that
play
found
there.
it. You founded the segment, so we're gonna get into it. Biz,
I don't know that that's
ready
true.
at
Oh,
any
what is
moment.
this? There's an ad. Just bear with me here. Fucking A.
This
You think,
segment
you
is
know?
not, this segment is not sponsored by any of our sponsors. Are you even playing it? I can barely hear it.
Dude, I don't know where the sound's coming out of the phone. I'm usually using a speaker.
That's it. And there we are. Biz's News Corner live from the Infiltrate Radio News.
Why do we do this to
box.
ourselves? Why do we do it?
But today, today's the winter solstice, and what we are looking at is something called the Great Conjunction. Have you guys heard of it?
What's its function?
Yeah.
The Great Conjunction. So that the astrological phenomenon is very rare. People around the world.
Oh yeah.
The Christmas star, when two astronomical bodies meet in a celestial dome. That sounds sexy. What is it?
For our everyday readers, there's two stars in the sky that'll look a little brighter than usual. Next story.
No, it's Jupiter and Saturn are coming close. I guess there was
they're coming close together, and
but did that already happen today? It says sunsets at.
I know.
4:32.
I can never get with the astrological news because it's always like, even though you're reading it at 6 a.m., 2 hours ago you could see 3 planets collide. It's like, what the fuck?
Or it's Rochester, so it's like go outside and look in the sky and you see nothing because it's cloudy.
Overcast.
I think what's funny about it though too is that they're definitely trying to make it out to be like a 2020 thing. You know what I mean? Like it's
Right.
I guess they haven't been
Apocalyptic.
Yeah, it's got to be apocalyptic in nature. But
Jupiter and Saturn are going to crash together for the first time.
right. Winter solstice today. So what do you think is going to happen? Do you have any opinion on the vaccine that's coming our way, Scott? How do you feel about this whole thing? Do you think by June we'll be out of the swamp and into the?
Geez, I sure hope so, but I've learned to even comment on this. Like I don't think I should even comment because so my wife's in healthcare. She works at a hospital and at a doctor's office, and she's been on the front lines this whole time, and it's been really tough for her and her colleagues, having to wear like the freaking hazmat suit and the whole thing.
Yeah.
I asked her the other day what she felt about the vaccine, and she didn't really have an answer for me. She's like, I don't really know. And I have a bunch of friends that are like, just singing praises, saying, good God Almighty, we've got this vaccine, and I want to believe that this is the answer to all our prayers, but I'm really skeptical about something that they like kind of rushed out and been like, here, take this, it's going to be fine. I want it to be fine. I think it's so hard to know what the right answer for anything is these days. I mean, one person will give you one set of stats, another person will give you another set of stats, and they both say they're right.
Yeah.
And that's something that's interesting too, that when we talk about commoditization too, like news right now is
oh yeah,
fake news became cool and funny, and it really fucked with the flow of information for people.
I also don't think that was an intentional thing. I think what happened was it kind of like podcasting, kind of like music. It gave voice to to people that maybe didn't have a voice before, didn't have the means. They don't have to be vetted in any way to.
Well, I think a little bit like what Scott was saying before.
So if it's catchy enough, as a news person, you can say something, and if you say it with enough conviction, enough people are listening, they'll believe it. I don't think that was intentional, but back in the day, and I thought about this earlier today too. it might have made it easier for nefarious players to disseminate um, non-truthful information because there were only like a few networks out there. So if someone
Right.
was in control of that, it was much easier to say, well, everyone watching this is my only trusted source of this information. It must be true. They must be vetting their information in some way. Someone must be keeping them honest. And I don't know if that was necessarily true. So I don't know if we're in actually a better place now, but we're just seeing behind the curtain, uh, because any random person could say they know what they're talking about, or in actuality, we're in a worse place now. There's more fake news. Um, I don't
Well,
know.
look at through history. Look at where how the media and the press has where they've come from. So if you go back to World War II, there was an understanding where the press never showed pictures of FDR in his wheelchair
Right.
or getting any kind of assistance walking. It was
Mhm.
like it was a courtesy that they extended to the president so that they didn't show his infirmity. Um, Now, forget it. There'd be no chance in hell if somebody, was hiding that, and next thing you know, they're in a wheelchair, and they would just go nuts. And,
Mhm.
not that there's anything bad about it, but that's what they would be. It's like weakness. They jump on any kind of weakness and exploit it. And that's just where, like you said, it's a commodity. The news is a commodity. That's why when you'll see a headline that says, a 4-year-old boy dies of COVID. And then when you look it up, you're like, yeah, the 4-year-old boy died of COVID. But he's the only, boy that died out of, I don't know, 12,000 kids. Now, obviously, I'm not speaking from any
Right.
kind of fact. I'm just using that as an example. Like you'll see
They're
sensationalized
gimmicky.
headlines.
Yeah.
And I am definitely not the kind of person that is anti-media by any means. I still believe that there are very respectable and professional journalists out there that are trying to bring truth and trying to bring stories to the American people. I believe that they're out there. Um, it's just a really screwed up time.
Yeah, I wonder where we're heading with this all too, because you see some. I mean, the dichotomy of like, I like to watch two different versions of everything and then a middle version. So when I watch a news story, I go to Fox News and I go to CNN and I watch NBC News, like, and I watch some stuff that's online about the news story. And if I'm going to watch something, I watch kind of like all the different sides of it, and then I piece together the little bits and pieces of the information that feel the truest, or at least that they're,
Somewhere in the middle.
The
yeah, that
most
they're all
consistent, at
agreeing on it.
least.
And I just wonder where, like I said, I wonder if there ever was integrity in the news media or in the media at any point, or if it was just such an illusion because there were so few sources to get your information
I see
from.
Well,
what
I
you're
think
saying.
You know?
I think also to like Scott's point, like with YouTube and the commoditization or whatever it is we keep saying here, the result of it being funny to parody the things we love, to parody the the drama behind some news stories, the seriousness behind it, to take away the seriousness, because parody became the go-to for any schmo with a phone that's trying to make something funny. Parody is like the default. Just like if every filmmaker starts off in horror, like how, what I mean? It's just one of those things that, like, with the rise of YouTube and the rise of viral sensation, the tool that was used to do that was parody. And I think that there are just, like, Patrick said that he doesn't think that it was intentional. I don't think that like someone sought out to like let's destroy media and make it so saturated you can't tell what's real or fake anymore. But I think that propaganda like Facebook and the mindset of, well, let's just consume no matter how bad it is, like you said earlier, created this sense of, well, these are not facts. and I'm going to give them to you stated as facts, and somehow they still get shared around and people debate on the comments, even though the name of the page is "These are not facts." Like, you know what I mean? It's like they're blatantly telling you this is not news, and then people still debate it.
Like the Onion, where people
right, yes,
share an Onion story, and you see people get outraged.
And now it's like the Onion is it and people are like, well, what does that mean? Like fake news is something that people just don't know exists. So when you bring it to their attention, they're just so flabbergasted and so on the defense that it's like, well, now we have to debate over how stupid you are instead of the topic we were just going to talk.
Well, I think it's definitely used as a tool to, for nefarious abusers of it, like, like the Russian government or other governments that want to do it, or even just individuals that want to, push along their whatever their agenda is that they need to push along. So that's definitely there. But I, like you were saying, I don't think it was an intentional move towards that, but the people that realized that was happening and took advantage of it, that are very, very good at it. And I hope that, we're moving towards somewhere that, like, there's a solution to that, because there's so many facets of our society, like the commoditization, like I said, of music and entertainment, but everywhere, even just the commoditization of like labor to robots or automation
and fast food and
all that
sort
of
robots
stuff.
Taking your orders and shit. Yeah.
What was interesting about COVID is it forced us to stay in our houses, and we talked with Monica last week too about her gardening, which I never got into, but a lot of people started gardening
so bad.
And things like that. So I'm hoping there's this like organic movement of like a return to, what the hell were we doing before this? Because I also talked about some article about fame being going away. Kind of everyone's seeing like there's nothing actually there. Like there's this like non-amazement with celebrity that came about during all this, because they're so out of what's being shown as like this is so amazing is so out of touch. And the reason I bring that up too, Biz, is because of your statement before about a radio host saying this random thing. A lot of times they're sensationalizing something that really isn't.
They're memeing it. That there's even a term for it.
They're memeing.
Yeah, that's what people say. You're memeing me, bro. Like it's when you're making a joke that was already made and reused through a meme, and now you're trying to sell it as this original joke that you're memeing me, dog. Like.
Yeah. Do you think that that's where we're moving to, or do you think we're going deeper down in the hole, Scott? What do you think? Are you a hopeful guy? Are you a glass half full guy? Or are you? We're all going.
I like to be positive. I really like to be positive, and I try. And I think the real artists, the real thinkers, the real ones are gonna separate themselves from the rest. And it's going to be plain. It's just, it's just weird right now. But I think because there's a lot of noise, it might be a little harder for people to do that. But I think eventually we're going to start learning. We're going to start learning the best. What is right? What is the better? I don't know. I'm not explaining it good enough. But
way to approach the situation.
If everything you drank every day was coffee, and someone finally gave you a cup of coffee that was really good, you'd be like, oh crap, that is really good. Oh my God. And you'll know it right when it happens.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's going to happen with anything, music, movies.
I'll end the business news corner here for a second, because you brought up something or a point that I guess leads me into another thing that you kind of briefly touched on earlier, where you said you don't drink, and you found yourself in a situation right at as you were changing from, was it right when you were changing from radio to what you're doing now, when you decided I'm not having any more alcohol or anything like that?
My quitting alcohol, this is a result of my quitting alcohol, but that was after I stopped drinking before I left radio, so they're not really linked.
What? So because we kind of talked about this, I think a little bit on the previous show too. So I want to get some more like conversation around it. Like I found myself with things in my life, like let's say, bubblegum music, or the trash that is being passed off as news, or things like alcohol. Like I've myself taken a break from alcohol here. I'm almost at 30 days now, I think, give or take, almost a month. But even things like food or cigarettes or whatever, like getting something that is unhealthy out of your environment. Like, was it a conscious decision to say like this thing is not really doing me any good, and so it something that needs to go?
It definitely needed to go. I was not. Essentially, I was self-medicating for whatever things were wrong in my life.
The PTSD you mentioned, probably.
That was one of them. That was one of them, and it wasn't until every alcoholic that's at AA or whatever will talk about their rock bottom, and everybody's rock bottom is different. Some people's rock bottom might be, in jail. Other people's rock bottom just might be, disappointing somebody that they care about. Yeah. So that's where I was. I didn't like who I had become. I know that my family wasn't real happy with me, and I felt like I needed to make a change. And that was what I decided to. And there was a couple of things that brought me to that, but yeah. I decided that it was one thing that I could get rid of from my life that did me no favors at all. Zero favors.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest difficulty. I think when people are trying to stop doing something that they know is not a benefit or not a positive, I guess, in their life, whether it be the way that they're eating or drinking or whatever the case may be. And I think especially now with this year being what it was and everyone being locked in their houses with not a lot of external distractions happening, I guess.
Yeah.
The reason I brought this up twice now is because I think that people probably have fallen into those things to distract themselves, things like alcohol or drugs or whatever. And I think it's helpful to hear how people overcame, I guess, especially with alcohol. I think the biggest thing is the thought of missing out on the good time, maybe.
Yeah, the FOMO.
People like go to a party or something and they're like, well, I'm not going to have any fun if I'm there, or everyone else is drinking. And I think the same goes for like food. You're like, I'm going to miss out on this, cake or whatever, or this slice of pizza. And so you do it even though you don't necessarily really want to do it and you regret it after doing it. It's like something that people fall back into, myself included. I have those type of vices that that you lean on, I guess, when you feel like you've got no tools. What did you feel? Do you feel, and if you don't want to talk about this, that's fine, but like, what did you feel like helped you along the way with changing that behavior, like with regards to alcohol? Like, did you substitute something else, like for starting a business or having projects to yourself? Or
no, and that's a common thing that people do. You find like a lot of people that go to AA, and I am all in favor of any kind of 12-step program, that anything that helps people to change themselves in that way. But a lot of folks, they'll quit drinking all the time to going to AA all the time, and that becomes their new addiction. It's not like it's not a bad thing, but I definitely did not replace it. It just was no longer. And I tried to quit drinking before in the past, and it didn't really take. Not to cast aspersions on my background, but I am, come from an Irish background, so we're kind of known as the drinkers. My whole family, family gatherings wasn't about family. It was about who's drinking what and how much is there. You know, we didn't know that that's what it was about, but that's what it was about. And it wasn't until I was able to take a step back and look at consuming alcohol for me, what it was, to realize that it was something that I put way too much stock into. I made it way more important than it really is.
Right.
And it's been a while since obviously you've had a drink now. It's been obviously over 3 years because you've had Rock Fox for 3 years, right?
Actually, I'll be at 2 years at the end of January.
2 years. Okay.
Yeah.
So, but at this point, I'm supposing that you probably don't even really think about having a drink, or does that still come about every now and again?
No, I mean, only when I'm going out and buying my wife her vodka, which doesn't bother me at all. You know, she wants to have a couple of drinks. That's her thing. I finally got to a point where I didn't need to worry about it, and I have this happen a lot where people are like, "Hey, you want a beer?" And I'm like, "No." "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that." And I'm like, "No, it's cool. It doesn't trigger me or anything like that. I'm fine." You know, and some people it does, and everybody's different. But
I used to smoke cigarettes a long time ago, and when I quit, I remember the thought of not ever being able to have a cigarette was so such a giant. Like, oh my God, I'm never ever gonna have another cigarette the rest of my life. Like the thought of that was so overwhelming. And then after a few, maybe 6 weeks, 7 weeks. I mean, it probably took over a month, maybe 2 months, before I realized I wasn't thinking about it. I'd still have moments where I'd think about like, oh, I would want to do that. But I think like the year mark, after I was not smoking for about a year. Finally that really just, I never really thought about it anymore. Occasionally I'd see someone smoking and I'd be like, oh, that might be nice. But then I realized also how good I felt not smoking.
Yeah.
And the thought of doing that again was almost like, why would I possibly want to ever put that into my lungs, you know?
Literally,
I did a swap where I took up running when I quit smoking and started running marathons and stuff like that. Like I got really into running. So the thought of that, I mean, it would have ruined my running, right? It has, just having smoked, ruined my ability to run fast. Just in general. Like it's never recovered. I'm never as fast as people that have never smoked. But I think that you know, it's helpful for people to know that does go away, that craving or the boredom from it, or whatever the fear is of losing out or missing out on the enjoyment of it does go away. And there's other things to fill your time besides like the alcohol and that sort of thing. And I don't know why I wanted to kind of say that on the podcast, but it's like we're almost at a year where it was going to be only 2 weeks, you know. And I think in the beginning of it too, a lot of people are like, oh, we'll just drink all the time, and people got into the habit of like every day I'm going to have a drink every single day, and then it becomes a lot. So I don't know. I just think
I'm glad I quit drinking before COVID. That's for sure.
Right.
My goodness, because it would have not been pretty.
But yeah, Patrick, I mean that's how I quit smoking cigarettes and drinking alcohol. I mean, like almost a decade apart from each other, but using that same exact strategy, rather than overwhelming yourself with I'm never going to do it again. Comfort yourself with I'm not going to do it today. And once you get enough todays racked up, I'm a very competitive person. I'm all about the high score. I mean, after going like 5 years without drinking, it's like, well, if I drink now, am I going to go another 5 years? Probably not. I probably should just stay away from it so that I can keep besting myself. And then once you hit 10 years and 12 years and 13 years, it's like, oh, well, I'd be foolish to start now. Look at all the people my age that are dying to quit now. And you know what I mean? It's just one of those things that you gotta not psych yourself out from it. Especially when it came to smoking. When I worked in a call center, like it was fear of missing out. It was fear of the talk that was going to happen at the smoking section about the customers or about the day or whatever it was, like fear of missing out on that. And then just kind of fear of missing out of I don't know, like there's a lot of things I feel like FOMO plays a factor into when it comes to like tobacco use, alcohol use. Like it really just comes down to like, how you're feeling about it, I
with
guess. Like,
with smoking in particular, it's funny too because your breaks get filled up with, oh, I'm gonna smoke a cigarette on
I'm
my
gonna
break.
waste that time in the
Same thing with,
cold.
I mean, drinking has that same sort of thing, right? Oh, okay, it's Friday and Saturday. So Friday and Saturday you go out and you go to the bar and you
Well,
that's your thing.
society
There are these,
society has made it that way too. It's an actual action. Like, what are you doing? Oh, I'm smoking. Like, you're not doing anything. You wouldn't say you're breathing. You wouldn't say you
Right.
know what I mean? Like, and if I'm drinking with buddies, well, what are you guys doing? Oh, we're drinking. Well, what else are you doing? You guys just standing there circle jerking? Like, what do you mean? You got to be doing something else. Like,
It's true.
but I did take the route of like swapping out because even when I quit smoking, I also watched a video on how to solve the Rubik's cube, and then I just constantly carried around
there's
a
a video
Rubik's
about
cube
that.
and messed it up. And then would solve it, and then messed it up and solved it, and that's what I was doing, like in place of it. But the
Wow.
breaks, like at work, were the hardest. Like, what do you do during that time?
Yeah.
I started writing more, like
Best your career. Try to get a promotion.
yeah, things
15
like
minutes twice a day. Try to get a promotion for the next month.
We used to go out for cigarette breaks when I worked at Carnival, and my boss was such a hardcore smoker, and I was just a kind of a normal smoker, I guess, at the time.
Yeah.
And he'd say, "Let's go out for a ciggy," and we'd go out, and he'd smoke like four. He'd chain smoke four, and I was like, "Holy crap!" And then that's what I ended up doing. Thankfully, when my son was born, is when I quit smoking, and I haven't picked up since.
Yeah,
Thankfully, that was 17 years ago.
that habit is the worst. I'm glad that's kind of
My gosh.
Smoking is stigmatized enough though that it's
ass appeal.
most people that quit usually stay away from it because it's, like, people are like, oh, well, all the health effects. Like, you could argue that, like, cirrhosis is like 90% caused from too much alcohol. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of things that alcohol has done to prove that it's not in your health favor. You know what I mean? Like, so like it just takes people wanting to not escape. It's not even about escape. I think some people literally just like some people like to have a lot of sex, some people like to drink. Like, it comes down to just part of your personality when you're growing up. It's not even that you use it as a coping mechanism. You use it as part of, like, defining your personality.
It's a social.
Then when you have to give it up, it's like it feels like you're giving up a part of yourself. Like,
exactly.
As dramatic as that sounds, but
It's true though, and that's our society has put this amazing put alcohol consumption as a key factor in who we are as a society,
big
and
time.
it's like it doesn't have to be that way
Yeah.
at all.
I think so. A pro tip I've learned over time too: the same method you use to kind of like, or at least I've used to quit doing things like cigarette smoking or just not drinking for a month or whatever the case may be, or not drinking. I don't know how long this is gonna end up being, but it may be just be like, all right, I'm done with alcohol. Or, it's very possible. But the same thing or technique, I guess, can be used to pick up stuff. So like if you want to make something a habit, like for instance exercise or writing a book or
Yep.
Making a movie, right? It's those little steps in the direction, like we started.
Those little bursts you get. Yeah.
I'm bringing it back full circle here, Biz. All right, like at the beginning, where you're setting your life in a particular direction, little by little, and over time, that compounding interest of those small things you're doing day after day after day become your new direction and your new way of life, so to speak. So you can become let's say a writer. I mean, I'm sure when you wrote your book, Biz, right, it wasn't, I'm just gonna all of a sudden one day. You probably tried to write before that, right? And then at some point,
Well, I was a writing major in school, so I had a lot of like unfinished business, I guess you could say, because I had hundreds of stories that I started to turn in real quick and get like a C, and then it never went anywhere.
Yeah. So, I read something, if you want to write a book, you can write a book in 30 days. Every day, you know what I mean? Write a chapter, even if it's a small book, every day for 30 days. It's just 30 days, you write a small chapter in the book, right? And eventually at the end of that 30 days, you'll have a book. And then at the end of that 30 days, you're also then a writer that's written a book. And you can use that to kind of propel yourself. And same goes for like filmmaking or
I think I mentioned this before, that like one of the big reasons that my book actually got made was because my wife would tell me, like, Biz, if you only have 5 minutes to spend right now, That's 5 more minutes than you spent on it before, and that's 5 less minutes to complete the goal. And I used to hear her say it, and I'd be like, okay, yeah, maybe I'll do it. But then one day she explained it. She was like, if it takes 500 hours to write and edit this book, and you're doing it in 5-minute increments, it's still moving. It's just not moving as fast as it could. And you don't have to do just 5 minutes. You can do 50 minutes, 100 minutes, however many you want. But if you dedicate just the 5, you're still doing something. You're still throwing a pebble into the pond. You know what I mean? And honestly, it sounds crazy because it took me 5 years to finish and edit and publish the book. But like, had she not told me that all the time, I probably would have thought, oh, I've only got 5 minutes. It's not going to help anything. And, you know, sometimes it was just 5 minutes, just sitting there rereading a chapter that I just read 2 days ago that I made one correction on. Or maybe it was 5 minutes that turned into an hour that turned into, you know, a lot of work got done. You know what I mean? It's really about not putting obstacles in the way for you to just do it. You know what I mean? Like it's so simple that you could literally just get up and start writing right now. All 3 of us could stand up right now and start exercising if we're unhappy with how healthy we are, but none of us are going to do that. You know what I mean? Like,
I'm working out with my son. We just started not too long ago.
Nice. It's hard to work out during COVID, I feel like, because
well, we have
other than outside activities, you know what I mean? You'd have to have like an indoor gym.
Yeah, we have an indoor gym.
Oh, you're lucky.
Well, what's really about right now too, though, there's a ton of like YouTube, like you can look up yoga.
Oh, yeah.
I've been doing yoga once a week just from a YouTube channel I started watching. I forget the name of it now, but I should probably plug that because I do it once a week. And then I did get a treadmill and stuff. And I've seen a bunch of my friends getting saunas too, which I got I bought a sauna recently for my house too, for my home gym. I got like a whole weight set and all this stuff. But it's a matter of like just doing it every day, because working out, I mean, still to this day, I hate it, but it's become such a habit for me to do it that if I don't do it, I miss it. Kind of like smoking a cigarette, right? You do it. If that's part of your day, eventually it becomes part of your day. Same thing with exercise. If you just every single day, even if you don't want to be doing it, you get up and you go through the motions of doing it, eventually it becomes a habit, and eventually it's like, well, I didn't do that, now I feel bad,
I feel weird. Yeah.
So when we first decided we weren't going to make bottom feeders, it was in 2016. And I quit drinking in January of, what would that be? 2019, right? Yeah, 2019, January 2019. We had it done in just over a year from that date.
Mm-hmm.
If I did not quit drinking, I can guarantee you that bottom feeders would have never happened. Because one of the things that I did was every time I thought about drinking early on, I put that energy into doing one more thing for the movie, just like Biz is talking about. And if that one thing was to send a message to Steve to say, hey, man, you know, how are those revisions? Or, hey, did you hear from this person? Or let's set a date to have this done. And we would set dates. You know, yeah. It's huge. It's huge. But those increments, you know, they add up. And next thing you know, we were like, well, on day one of the shoot, we're like, holy shit, man, you believe that we're here? We're about ready to shoot the first scene of this movie.
It was pretty incredible, honestly. I think I only missed one day of that production. I think we ran like 22 days or something. I think it was maybe it was only 19. I think I only missed one of the days, and it was pretty incredible to see you two both kind of be like, well, we don't really know what we're doing, so just bear with us. And then by the end of it, it was like, can you guys believe what we just pulled off? Like, you know what I mean? It was a fun ride.
Yeah, it was. We got lucky because we had a really fantastic crew. I mean, Biz was one of the guys throughout the whole thing that was really, you know, he was on top of it. It was like words
can't describe what I was doing, apparently.
Yeah. No. Well, because you were doing a lot. You did like a dozen different jobs, man.
I know.
I
remember
everything.
It was so fun, man. It honestly, like, I explain this to my wife all the time, that like there's certain jobs that you get that you could be making $5 an hour. Not that that's what you paid me, but you know, you could be making $5 an hour, and it doesn't feel like work. So even though you just spent 15 hours and you've only got like $100 to show for it, it's like, my time probably could have been spent a little more strategic. But man, it was so fun that it just feels like a, you know,
You should have been paying us for the pleasure. I'm sure there are a lot of producers that think that too.
Probably. You're a background actor. You owe me, actually.
I can't wait to see it. And just for those that's still listening at this point, the bottomfeedersmovie.com, right, is where that'll be.
Just search up Bottom Feeders. We're actually we've got the parenthesis #1 on IMDb, which means even though there's a lot of other Bottom Feeders, we're the first one to be legit.
Nice.
Right.
Nice. And then of course rockvox.com, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. For your podcast, we're coming up in an hour and a half here, so
my goodness,
be respectful of your time. I think an hour and a half, maybe more.
It is, yeah, about an hour 33, I think.
And what we really should do, I'd really like to do an episode maybe from your studio there.
That'd be great.
So we'll talk about that. We'll figure out some guests maybe next month sometime. We'll figure out. Are you booked? How far out are you booked?
Usually 2 weeks.
Okay. So we'll figure something out. Are you down for that, Biz?
Yeah, that'd be super fun. It literally, I kid you not, Patrick, when I used to joke about, I know this guy that owns a podcast place around the corner from me, I was talking about Scott the whole time. It literally, I think that if I punch in the address to where Rockfox is, I think it says it's like 4 minutes from my house. It's super close.
Walking directions?
No, not at all.
If you have the time.
Well, Scott, I really appreciate you coming on the show. I know you've had me on your radio show a couple of times, and we keep crossing paths here and there through all the stuff we're making here in town and beyond. So don't be a stranger, and let me know if you have anything else you want to pimp out, and anything else you want to get out there before we end the show here.
No, just follow Bottom Feeders on Facebook. That's probably the best way, on Facebook and Instagram. We're actually on Instagram too. And keep a lookout for the movie, because when it's out, we're going to need a lot of support. And I really think that you folks are going to like it. It's
yeah, I can't wait to see it. Can't wait to see it. All right, well, so we're on episode 45. We're coming up on episode 46. Do we know who next week's guest is? I don't think we do yet.
I think we do. You did not send the invite yet. We never do. We never do. Stop it.
Cancel before
oh, that is hurtful. That is just because almost every guest does that to us doesn't mean
it'll be fine. If wishful thinking, we'll hope and pray.
Right.
But thank you guys for listening. I mean, our listeners are the reason why we do this, and we love hearing from you. I didn't drop the email again, but Infiltrate Radio Podcast at gmail.com. If you have any questions, you want to comment on the shows, we get all sorts of weird stuff. So we should start a segment too on emails. But shoot us your questions, your concerns, your commentary on what we talk about. And as usual, please, if you're interested in any of the drinks that we're drinking on the show, click on the links, purchase them. It helps continue our tea habits here as we're going on. And thank you guys for listening to the show. I'm Patrick Joanne.
And I'm Biz LaChance.
And we'll talk to you guys next week, maybe, if you're good for Christmas.
Infiltrate Radio.